Today is independence. So we're going to be talking about independence, which is the fertile soil which critical thinkers thrive in. You cannot have critical thinking without independence. It's like it's the most important or something, but it's not. We talked about that yesterday. No need to rank these. They are all working together and they're all super essential and consequential. It's all intertwined. So it's like one of the most important things, that's for sure. We've got Voltaire. He was a serious social critic. I'm going to get the centuries wrong, but like a couple hundred years ago. Definitely a liberal voice who definitely embodied this ideal. Minds differ still more than faces. It's a very cool way that we don't often think about, that our minds are as unique as each of our little faces. We have, just like each of our faces are authentic to ourselves, so are our minds. Y'all get this. This is pretty self-explanatory, but why does this matter to us today, and how can we embody this? That's really what it means to be a critical thinker. Is like, okay, yeah, like we know this. Maybe no one said it explicitly like Voltaire just said it, but like he's just evoking a truth we all know and he named it and I like it. But what do I do with that? And like, how can I take that up in my life? To be independent is to showcase that your mind is different. No one's going to know your mind is different if you don't share it with them, because unlike faces, minds are completely private. We might have no idea. If you never let us in, you could totally mimic other people and never actually share any authentic thought. So this is where it really differs from the face, right? Is that it requires a different level of action and engagement to showcase your independence, right? With your face, you just show up, unless you're like an identical twin. I guess that's a different experience. But to showcase your independent mind rather than your face, where you just show up and you're automatically different, you have to engage in action to show that your mind is different. It is not obviously apparent, right? Even though we all know this truth, we often do tend to think also, because we can't see each other's minds in the same way that we can see and judge each other's physical appearance, we assume everyone's minds looks like ours, right? Which really is funny. That should really be the takeaway from this piece of wisdom. Just like you don't expect to show up into a space where everybody looks like you, and like, I mean, literally identical to you, why would you expect them to agree? Why do we expect that we're going to all come to consensus? That isn't a bad conclusion that we've come to. I think that does. I'm going to revere our choice to engage in that behavior. First of all, we're submerged in our own mind, right? We think our perspective is the only perspective, which you can't really blame us for. We have to like learn how to objectify that and see beyond that. But also, I think just like we were talking about, how we all know this, right? And what Socrates talks about, which I say all the time, is that education is about evoking truths from within, and an educator doesn't teach you something new. They teach you something you already know. The greatest educators do. That, I think, is why we enter spaces and think everyone's going to think like us, is because we think we've found those truths. We think our perspective is always the most truthful one. And Rick Roderick, who has an amazing philosophy series on YouTube, seriously, I consumed it so many times during the pandemic. He talks about this and how you wouldn't hold on to your views if you didn't think they were right. Everybody thinks their view is right. And when I'm talking about Socrates, in that same time period, the only way in Greek society was to come up against another person's truth and be like, oh my gosh, wait a second. That's more right than my truth is. That's the mindset we should enter in as independent thinkers in any space. It's like, okay, let me recognize as I enter into dialogue with others that my independent mind, I've come to some powerful truths because I have a powerful mind and I'm an intelligent being, and my independent mind has come to certain conclusions. However, as an intelligent being who's in this process of continually growing and shedding old views that weren't correct. That's happened so many times. I've confronted so many other people's truths where I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to take that one. Just like I've taken this metaphor from Rick Roderick because it's a really great metaphor. That's what we're meant to do. So we're meant to be finding better ways from other people. That's what we do. What is the first thing we learned about humans? Is that like we learn how to use tools? This is one of the amazing things. Look at these other animals who learn how to use tools. Yeah, using tools is like this super vital thing to the human experience. Knowledge is one of those tools, and the logic on which you stand is one of those tools. So you should be looking for upgrades all the time. There are some good old-fashioned classics, right? Like do no harm. That's a solid hammer, man. Hammers are never going out of style, right? Construction people, they're never going, I don't know. But other ones we want to keep upgrading and like, oh no, I could adjust this feature. And just like with any iPhone, how pissed would we be if iPhones were still as slow? I mean, they have planned obsolescence and crap like that. So it's not like they're on some amazing progress, but they do have to progress because people expect it, because that's what human life is. We evolve. And so anytime you enter a space, you should say, okay, I have independent, unique perspective. I'm trying to be as truthful and as truthful to my experience and as accurate to reality as I can possibly be with my knowledge. In doing that, I recognize that I'm growing and I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. God, there are Bible verses like this. There are quotes from the founding fathers like this. You don't wear the same coat you wore as a child as you do as a man or woman or non-binary person. You should recognize that you have the best possible truths you can have, but that you're in evolution, as is everyone else you meet. And by recognizing your own independence and fallibility, you're going to notice everyone else's too. Their views are just as Swiss cheesy as yours. There's holes all in their knowledge too. They're not better than you. You're just as independent as them. You're just as fallible as anyone else. And I think when we enter spaces that way, honestly, we're not going to have such a rejection against experts and things. I think that's been a huge critical issue in our country, is that we don't know who to listen to, so we don't listen to anyone. And that's not going to work, because some people, experts in the medical field, I would say, have expertise. They're not better than us. They are independent people who have spent their independent time pursuing a particular field, a body of knowledge, just as you have independently been spending your time with different bodies of knowledge. And just as you should be respected when you talk about what you independently know, what you have pursued and sought with your independent purpose, yeah, you should be listened to as an expert in your fields. What are your fields? Other experts in their fields, y'all, we have to trust each other. We have to trust each other. And that has not been happening, because we've really shut down and gotten mad when people don't think like us. Hello. Nobody's mind looks like yours, just like nobody's face looks like yours. We shouldn't be offended by different opinions, but we need to be respectful to our own independent minds and like really really engage in believing in ourselves, and believing in ourselves at like a structural level. I think people also reject experts because we've been told that all minds are the same, therefore they can be standardized on a test. That's literally what standardization says, is that all the minds can be judged on this criteria, and some of you are stupid and not worthy of a good life. You're not worthy of a good life because you, as an independent thinker, suck. You suck and deserve a bad job and a bad life and not enough money. What? That's a system that relies on the logic that all minds can be judged on one thing. All minds are so different. That's like judging faces on one thing. Who can show me a standardized method for judging faces? Go on. Show me a standardized test where everyone comes to the same answer, where there's a right and wrong for how faces are. Anybody? Anybody? Voltaire? What do you think about that? If there's no test to determine what standard face is the most attractive or the most, who cares? Who cares of all the adjectives we could choose? That's absurd. Almost as if basing an entire social system off of intelligence, off of a test that, yes, proves that some people are smart and some people are dumb, and that's just how life shakes out. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, that's like testing over faces. Absurd. Minds cannot be judged off one test, 100 tests. That's not what minds are for. Faces aren't for tests. Minds aren't for tests either. It is much more than that. This is a computer that has no limit. This is like the internet. It's like running a test on the internet. How you gonna do that? How you gonna run a test, a standardized test on the whole internet? Because y'all, I have a lot of tabs open. So like, don't come telling me that there is a single test or a series of tests that is going to capture the minds in such a way that justify an unequal order. I won't stand for it. I won't stand for it because it's based on faulty logic. This is so obvious to everyone. Yeah, reject standardization just like you'd reject someone telling you, this is the #1 prettiest person on the planet. This is the #2 prettiest person on the planet. Intelligence is like that too.